Ego. But I don't mean the one you might be thinking about. I mean the embedded growth obligation. The EGO is the perceived obligation that a company or organization feels to grow continually. Quarter after quarter, year after year, more sales, more profits, continually and infinitely. It's a mindset and culture that's been held by most corporations and consequently people within those corporations and consequently a large portion of the population and consequently general mainstream consciousness in the Western world, which of course has spread to the East, North and South. It's a belief that leads to an obligation for those within an organization or institution to push and scheme for new ways to milk more out of the customer and the general population of potential customers. The embedded growth obligation is not a real obligation, it's a perceived obligation. And it's that perceived obligation which turns good and well-intentioned people into agents of exploitation, manipulation, and greed. After World War II, most of Europe was under rubble, and the US experienced unprecedented growth because of its newfound supremacy in the world. The US grew so much that an expectation for that growth to continue became embedded in the fabric of its institutions, its companies, and the minds of its people. Eric Weinstein calls egos structures that are built into institutions in times of growth that assume growth will continue. An institution must therefore grow to meet its EGOs, or its leaders must lie about the presence of growth. This compromising of incentives causes institutions to tend towards exploitative or sociopathic behaviors because their leaders have to face selective pressures to maintain the status quo of growth. Now, nothing in all of nature operates on the presumption of infinite growth, of course other than cancer, which eventually kills its host, which then kills the infinitely growing cancer itself, and in the process killing the idea that infinite growth is either possible or desirable. Embedded growth obligations are not a bug in our system, they're really a feature. It's what keeps things going on the way they have been. If a social media company makes a great service and they help to connect people from different parts of the world, then they'd have done the world a great service and they've built a great utility for humanity to benefit from. The social media company wouldn't grow exponentially, but they'd make enough money to keep the lights on and to feed their families comfortably. But what happens in the world of egos or embedded growth obligations, which all have an expectation of infinite growth, is that the social media company takes on $100 million from a venture capital firm that then expects them to continue growing so that the firm can make a return on their investment. Now the social media company has a conflict of interest, because now the primary motivation behind their service is not to connect the public, but to produce a 10 times return on their VC's investment. So they have to figure out a way to be 10 times more valuable to the investor, regardless of whether that's good for the lives of the people they offer their services to. And so begins the manipulation and schemes for your attention. More ads, shorter content, all to feed the EGO. If they don't take the $100 million from venture capital, then another competing company with a similar service simply would. So it's not that they're evil, they're just succumbing to other greater embedded growth obligations. The embedded growth obligation is a reflection of our civilization's collective ego, or our collective hubris. It's a collective imbalance that can only be adjusted on an individual basis, person by person. Michael Jackson said something about starting with the man in the mirror.